Okay, let's talk about Richard. So, yesterday, Tiniest Boop posted a link of this uh, article, sorry, and a couple of FBI files. Well, and another article in an FBI file. And I wanted to go over this to end the saga of Richard Aoki, FBI informant, truthful Black Panther. Who knows? Today we'll figure it out. Okay. Article has a map to find Chris Grave and oh my god. They go their background, but yeah, let's please get to Aoki. Yeah. When a celebrated activist turns out to be an FBI informant. Uh, it's time for the FBI to come clean about 60s era manipulation of social movement. Richard Aoki was a well-known activist in the San Francisco Bay Area, celebrated for his role as one of the only handful of Asian American members of the Black Panther Party, a leader in UC Berkeley's Third World Liberation Front in the late 60s and early 70s, and a mentor to a generation of left-leaning activists. Okay, we're going to whatever. Oh. So when the journalist Seth Rosenfeld alleged in August 2012 that Aoki was an informant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Rosenfeld shocked Aoki's family, friends, and allies. Okay, so this is the documentary we watched a couple of days ago. You can also watch it on YouTube. He also sought to shake up how we tell Black freedom movement history by playing up the fact that Aoki provided the founders of the Black Panther Party with their first guns. In the process, Rosenfeld raised important questions about what it is that informants do and what it means when an ally struggles against government racism and police repression turns out to be an informant for the government. Rosenfeld's allegations were surprising in part because they followed on the heels of the creation of two recent celebratory histories of Richard Aoki's life. Aoki died in March 2009. In November of that year, activist filmmakers released a history of his work with the documentary Aoki. I assume this is the documentary. In April 2012, University of Minnesota Press published a scholarly 496-page biography of Aoki titled Samurai Among Panthers, Richard Aoki on Race, Resistance, and the Paradoxical Life. Only 4 months after the publication of Samurai Among Panthers, Rosenfeld alleged in an August 20 news article that the man who armed the Black Panthers was an FBI informant, records show. Welcome back, Haley. Article has yeah. Roosevelt tread gently on the revered figure's memory. Having chosen not to share his research with activists or historians beforehand, he announced that unbeknownst to his fellow activists, Aoki had served as an FBI intelligence informant, covertly filling reports on a wide range of Bay Area political groups. Paradoxical life is an understatement, literally. Rosenfeld described asking Aoki directly during an oral history interview whether he had been an informant. Aoki denied it. And Rosenfeld twice mentioned in his story that Aoki committed suicide in 2009. Could Aoki have committed suicide out of fear that Rosenfeld would expose him? Rosenfeld didn't speculate overtly about Aoki's decision, but he seemed to raise the issue by paying significant attention to the way that Aoki died, something few others have dwelled upon. I mean, I think like as I mentioned that other in the other stream, could like suicide is such a common thing that the FBI does. Do you know what I mean? So, like, did the FBI kill him? Did he kill himself because he felt guilty? We don't know. And we will probably never know. Twice in the back of the head, nothing to see here. Oh my god. Rosenfeld's history was provocative and arguably sensationalistic. Rosenfeld's highlighting of Aoki's connection to the BPP piqued international interest. He played up the interest when he wrote that after Aoki provided guns to the Black Panthers, although carrying weapons was legal at the time, there is little doubt their presence contributed to fatal confrontations between the Panthers and the police. Like, whatever. Like, of course, but like, that is not Aoki's fault. And like, the police would have been harassing them regardless. So like, the surveillance and arrest though, he gave serial numbers. It wasn't Aoki's idea for the BBP to arm themselves. So yeah, so this line is of speculation is silly. Yeah, that is what I'm saying. It's like, what? Like he was like still in Newton wanted arms. What? It was an exaggeration that played to headlines. Rosenfeld seemed to be suggesting, without explicitly saying or proving, that Aoki acted on behalf of the FBI and therefore the FBI set the Black Panthers up. The BPP might not have armed themselves had it not been for Aoki or the FBI, and that carrying guns was a major cause for the Panthers' later fatal confrontations with police. That is so weird. Like, that part doesn't matter. I'm so like the Black Panther Party knew that they had to arm themselves. Like Aoki gave them the arms, but like they wouldn't gotten like I can only imagine if it was like if Aoki didn't give them the weapons, they would have gotten them through other means. Yeah. Yeah, it's information that matters. Oh my god, Finchal. Nothing matters. Rosenfeld published his story on Aoki just one day before the formal release of his book, Subversive. The FBI's Subversive. Shout out Subversive History. The FBI's war on student radicals and Reagan's rise to power. As his allegations raced around the globe, the exposure of Aoki as an informant not coincidentally also delivered extraordinary free publicity for Rosenfeld's new book. The methods that Rosenfeld first used to out Aoki as an informant put Aoki's allies, friends, and historians on the defensive. For weeks afterwards, a number of people sympathetic with Aoki and or the Black Panther Party, including Aoki's biographer Dine C. Fujino, Asian American Studies professor Scott Kurashige, and Black Panther historian Donna Murch, criticized Rosenfeld for his use of evidence, while also suggesting that his liberal politics distorted his ability to portray Aoki and the Black Panther Party a sympathetic or even historically responsible way. Okay, so at least we understand now that the white guy that was like presenting all of this was a liberal. Does that disprove the fact that Aoki was probably an FBI informant? No, but we'll see the context. The San Francisco Bay View also published a number of defense of Aoki by former Panthers and their allies. Then, according to Rosenfeld, the FBI released new records on Aoki as a result of a lawsuit by Rosenfeld under the Freedom of Information Act after the initial story and video were completed. These weren't just any records. In a remarkable turn of events, Rosenfeld was able to use the courts to compel the FBI to do something that it almost never does: release its files on an informant. When Rosenfeld published this file, FBI headquarters file, which I think it's this one, but yeah, whatever. Well, not whatever, but in response to his critics on September 7, with the story FBI files reveal new details about informants who armed Black Panthers, he conclusively proved, in my opinion, that Aoki was an informant of the FBI. The only question that remains is what kind of informant Aoki was. Let's fucking go! I'm taking issue with how this article is written, not the bigger role Aoki may or may have not played. However, did Aoki indicate he couldn't be trusted and they should use gun show loophole, etc.? What do you mean? Huey was literally a law student. Like, the Black Panthers knew that they could use, like, they could defend themselves under the law. Like, Huey P. Newton and Bobby still weren't like ignorant black people who didn't know what they were doing. Just saying. The owner of City Lights Bookstore was an informant too. They have infiltrators everywhere, of course. In what follows, I offer a close reading of the FBI. So it was the deceived's fault? It's no one's fault! What? What do you mean? They knew they had to get weapons. If they didn't get weapons, then they would have gotten killed. They weren't targeted because they were carrying weapons. They were being targeted because they were feeding children. Like, yeah, if you get caught up by the FBI, you can just tell your friend. Is informal fault? No, that's wild. Okay then. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Okay. Okay. On what Sinchal is saying, I do agree. Aoki should have just said it, and it's shitty that he ultimately worked with the FBI. Yes. Apart from that, like, the Black Panther Party was going to use weapons regardless. Huey P. Newton knew the law. Like, I'm so confused. In what follows, I offer a close reading of FBI documents to explain how and why they proved that Aoki was an informant. I also use the documents to draw attention to potential ambiguities in the relationship between Aoki and the FBI, to raise questions that can only be answered with further research, and to identify documents whose declassification might help us better understand Aoki's dual role as an informant and activist. I thought it was a criticism of the article. No, I'm reading the article to. I'm just reading the article. Never would have revolted if someone didn't tell them that they were slaves. Just they're just not that bright. Yep, that's what they. It was. Someone told them, like I'm like having a. I'm like okay. I'm just not going to look at chat for a second until I finish this part of the article. When Seth Rosenfeld first alleged that Aoki was an FBI informant, Rosenfeld had two compelling pieces of evidence. His biggest scoop was that the former FBI agent Bernie Threadgill Jr. Reportedly told him that Threadgill developed Aoki as an informant in the early 1960s, and that he was one of the best sources we had. FBI agents rarely, if ever, disclose the identities of their informants, so the fact that Rosenfeld got Threadgill to go on the record with such information before Threadgill passed away in 2005 is remarkable. So it is interesting to say the least that the FBI agent openly named the informant. This is not saying that Aoki wasn't an informant, but it is just remarkable that he mentioned his name. But Rosenfeld still needed corroboration of Threadgill's claim, and he seemed to find that in the single page of a single FBI document on the Black Panther Party. According to Rosenfeld's article, a November 16, 1967 intelligence report on the Black Panthers lists Aoki as an informant with the code number T2. Calling Aoki informant T2 was misleading. FBI reports regularly used T symbols to identify a source throughout a single report. FBI agents, instead of naming a source multiple times in their lengthy memoranda to FBI headquarters, would instead cite T1, T2, or T3 as shorthand. Each T number would then be listed at the end of a report identifying the corresponding source. A T symbol in the FBI report is an endnote, not a symbol reserved exclusively for informants. It could present an informant in a particular report, but it could also represent a person that an FBI agent spoke with, even under a false pretext, a newspaper article, the transcript of a conversation captured by an illegal wiretap, or any other public or private source of information. In addition, the use of one T symbol in one report did not oblige the FBI to use the same T symbol for the same source in other reports. Okay, like beyond Aoki's discourse, we're learning to understand how FBI documentation works. I can only hope that we can agree on that. So, contrary to Rosenfeld's initial claim, the description of Aoki as T2 offers no proof that he was an informant. This is perhaps why the FBI did not fully redact the page that disclosed this information. That Aoki was listed as a source for an FBI report does not prove that he had any formal relationship with the FBI. This is isolated, we're talking about right now just the first proof that Rosenfeld presented as Aoki being an FBI agent. That doesn't mean that Aoki wasn't an FBI agent. This proves the first evidence that Rosenfeld presented. That's it. I am trying to be the most clear. I'm still not seeing chat, but if you cannot agree with the factual statements that I'm making, there is no help for you. So contrary to Roosevelt's initial description of Aoki title was not proof. The Aoki listed as source of okay. What does indicate that Aoki was an informant is that on the same page from the November 16th, 1967 document, FBI document 105 HQ serial number 22, that identified Aoki as source T2, the type of sources listed with T symbols in that specific report are described as informants, underlined in original, used by the FBI as part of its investigation of the Black Panther Party. By not redacting the word informant and by clearly identifying T2 in that particular report with Aoki, the FBI inadvertently provided a crucial piece of evidence that Aoki was an informant for the FBI who reported on the Black Panthers. A number of Rosenfeld's critics treated this evidence as flimsy, but I think it's pretty damning, even if it doesn't provide any details about Aoki's specific work as an informant. So he was an informant. We already knew this, but I'm just reiterating, we know he was an informant, and there is so far like indisputable proof for that. Rosenfeld also cited his interview with former FBI agent M. Wesley Swearingen and his interview with Aoki as further evidence that Aoki was an FBI informant. These were important people to interview. Swearingen served as lead analyst of FBI intelligence on the Panthers for the San Francisco field office. See his interview. But neither the interview with Swearinger or Aoki provided solid evidence to prove or disprove Rosenfeld's allegation. So, if you haven't already caught up to what this article is trying to basically critique every point that has been made about Aoki's FBI informant status. So we have we proved that he was an informant? Yes. However, there are ways that people have tried to state that he was an informant that are ultimately illegitimate. That doesn't mean that he wasn't an informant, but we do have to be critical and like read twice to understand why he was an informant when we're reading FBI files. Also, before someone is like, oh, why do we need to understand FBI files? Because sadly, those FBI files are like provide great information about the greater context of what was happening during the 60s era, during any other type of actions that the FBI have historically taken to destroy any leftist movements, etc., etc., and therefore it is important for us to understand the language that the FBI speaks. You know, like. I don't get what's so hard to believe about COINTELPRO's pervasive infiltration, especially when it comes to the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense was getting firearms from. Yeah. FBI and CIA documents are useful as fuck. Yeah, like I am so confused. Like, why would anyone be against like learning how to discern the information from them? You know, precedent setting release of informant file. It is very rare for the FBI to ever release one of its informant files. Files with a 134 prefix contain the FBI's paperwork about its cultivation, use, and discontinuance of informants. Though prohibited by a consent decree with the National Archives from destroying its informant files, the FBI also has wide latitude under the Freedom of Information Act to forever refuse to release files to the public. Long after an informant has ceased to work for the Bureau, long after the subject of investigation has lost any significance, if it ever had any, pertaining pertaining to law enforcement or national security, even long after an informant's death, the FBI will still refuse as a matter of policy to disclose the name of any past informants. Indeed, FOIA law allows the FBI to refuse to even acknowledge the existence of informant files, even when requested by name. FOIA is Freedom of Information Act, just so we can all keep up. Why is the FBI so protective of informants' identities? Because the FBI argues to reveal a past informant's identity undermines the FBI's ability to recruit and maintain its informants today. Well, maybe you shouldn't have informants because abolish the FBI? I don't know. The possibility of future exposure could discourage potential informants from enlisting in the US government's current domestic intelligence programs. Maybe no one should be enlisting themselves into those programs in the first place. In this way, the FBI seeks to use its control of the past to continue exert control over the present and the future. People protective of Aoki's legacy have questioned why the FBI would release Aoki's informant file to Seth Rosenfeld, given its long-standing protection of informant identities. And I think this is a fair and valid question to raise. They have speculated that perhaps the FBI did so maliciously to slander a revered activist, not to engage in an honest historical reckoning. Why are they only now coming to the public light? Asked longtime Asian American activist and scholar Fred Ho when Rosenfeld released Aoki's SF file to the public. If one wants to entertain motives, were these documents fed to Rosenfeld only recently with the blowback he faced? Ho's speculation is understandable, but in my opinion, unfounded. First, there is an issue of timing. According to markings on the FBI file released to Aoki, the material in the file was declassified on July 18 and July 19, 2012, 1 month before Rosenfeld publicly accused Aoki of being an informant and therefore before he received any blowback. True. Second, there is an issue of the method that Rosenfeld received Aoki's file. He acquired it through litigation, not through FOIA. In other words, Rosenfeld had to use the federal courts to compel the FBI to release a file it had already chosen not to release to him in response to his FOIA request in 2009. The date of the search slips provided to Rosenfeld by the FBI. Rosenfeld filed suit against the FBI for Aoki's file on April 29, 2011. It took over a year for the FBI to even begin to declassify the file, which hardly suggests that the FBI just willfully handed the information over. Still, some continue to suggest that the FBI is jacketing Aoki, i.e., that the FBI is releasing fake documents purporting to indicate that Aoki was an informant to attach the label or jacket of snitch on him and discredit him. Aoki biographer Diane Fujino or Fujino first hinted at this possibility in a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle after Rosenfeld published his first story. Even after the release of Aoki's informant file, John Stutter wrote for the militant that Rosenfeld's allegations were nothing more than FBI snitch jacket allegations against a deceased activist. But the knowledge that the FBI even engaged in snitch jacketing comes from the release of FBI files about its counterintelligence programs. But knowledge of the FBI even comes from the release of files about its counterintelligence programs. To use those FBI documents to then discredit another set of FBI files without additional information seems to indicate a selective use of evidence. It also ignores another possible explanation for why the FBI may have released Aoki's informant files. The FBI didn't value his service enough or didn't see sufficient threat to contemporary national security to disobey a court order to release the file. I have not seen the court's judgment in the litigation that Rosenfeld used to compel the FBI to release Aoki's file to him. But Rosenfeld's decade-long lawsuit over FBI files related to Ronald Reagan and UC Berkeley may have undermined the FBI's credibility with the court. More importantly, once the government has officially confirmed someone's status as an informant, that person's informant file may no longer be withheld from FOIA requests. One could argue that the FBI's accidental release of information about Aoki's informant status legally required it to release far more than it wanted to about Aoki. Whether Rosenfeld used the courts to make this case isn't clear, but the latest release of documents to Rosenfeld certainly seems to constitute official confirmation, and therefore opens the door to a full accounting over Aoki's relationship with the FBI sometime in the future. So far, again, we have established that he was an FBI agent. That's confirmed 100%. We still don't know what was the exact relationship like with the FBI. That doesn't mean that he still was a piece of shit for being in the FBI. Regardless, we're learning how all of this legal process for releasing FBI files work. We are understanding how deep the FBI is willing to go to don't release information, why they release information sometimes, how they don't care sometimes about people being informed, how regardless of that they see the information about their informants as highly valuable because releasing them continuously would disencourage people from working with the FBI, etc., etc. So, again, I'm not seeing chat, but regardless of how you feel about Richard Aoki, this article is good information. So, yeah. Don't kill me for daring to read this article and thinking that this article is has good information and analysis. I don't know. Have a good stream. Thank you for coming, Kay. I mean, you're probably already gone, but yeah. There's plenty of people that were being used by the NED and various CIA fronts that weren't aware, like James Baldwin. Yeah. Are all informants willingly working with the FBI or possibly unknowingly? I think there is, Johnny just said some didn't know. Or do they use a different label for those sources? So far, that is unknown. Um, because apparently, oh, but it's a informant. But I don't know if that what that means either. Foya is commonly known. Uh, oh my god, I'm so confused about red. Red what terrorist. But yeah, they're saying informant, which is a bit more specific than source. But yeah, the way you read chat backwards, I know. Uh, Seth Rosenfeld's acquisition of Richard Aoki's informant file is therefore no small accomplishment and one that the FBI is probably still smarting over. It's unclear whether the file's release could serve as a legal precedent for future disclosures of informant identities. But the recent outing of Richard Aoki's and Western Withers as informants have certainly increased public awareness of FBI domestic intelligence practices. Wait, does the FBI work internationally? Isn't that like literally the CIA's job? Or like why would the writer want to say domestic intelligence practices rather than just FBI intelligence practices? This is just a side like query I have. It does collaborations with law enforcement in other countries. Interesting. All the time. Oh, interesting. Got it. I don't know that. I just assumed that the CIA does all the international stuff, but got it. It would not be surprising, based on these precedents, if we were to see more popular demands that the FBI open up its informant files well beyond the documents that it has on these two individuals. The format of FBI file 134 HQ 110 or 10,010. To understand the informant file release, to understand the informant file released to Rosenfeld. Hi, Boob, welcome. We're reading the article. Some people were like mad about it. I don't understand, but I'm fine now. We first have to make sense of its format. FBI file 100 the FBI file consists entirely to correspondence between the San Francisco field office and FBI headquarters. It is the record of field office. It is the record of field office requests to use Aoki as a certain kind of informant. Updates on his informant status and requests for for reimbursement of certain kinds to expense Aoki claims to have incurred. Wait, what? It is the record of field office. It is the record of field office. What? Long sentence is long. Yeah. Also, I don't. He was a like that's the thing. Like, I don't think this sentence is talking about Aoki being reimbursed. Also, welcome, Break Griff. I think they're talking about the reimbursement of Aoki's claims, and therefore I assume they're talking about paying like the FBI agent about the information that allegedly he got through Aoki. Because, like, I don't understand this sentence. It is the record of field office requests to use Aoki. It is a record field office requests to use Aoki as a certain kind of informant. Updates on his informant status and request for reimbursement of certain kinds of expenses Aoki claims to have incurred. Okay, so I can understand things he's buying like guns. I think so. But I mean, I don't think that is what this sentence is saying. I think this sentence is saying that the records of field office requested the FBI, in parentheses, to use Aoki as an informant, requested updates on his informant status, and that's where I'm like lost. And then the record of field office requested reimbursement. They requested the money for what allegedly, because they say Aoki claims to have incurred. So all of this is happening through the record of field office. Unless I am just like, I just don't know English. Because I don't know what record of field office is. Aoki claims he incurred certain expenses. He then requested reimbursement for those expenses. The file contains a record of those requests. Like, that's the thing. I would read it like that if it was like, what is record of field office? The office where they hold records on the FBI agents are spending money on. Got it. So they requested Aoki because that's another thing, right? Like, they requested Aoki, they request for reimbursement. Like, they requested reimbursement for the expenses Aoki claims to have incurred. Okay, so this present simple is fucking with me. Because it's like, shouldn't this be claimed? Fields means on the type stuff. Got it.
Put the money in the bag and I stole the keys. That was the last time you ever saw me.
Yeah, that sentence is super confusing. Like, who is like? These are professional journalists and they don't know how to write. Why do I write better than these motherfuckers? Okay, so we can conclude that Aoki made claims for money to the field office request. So this is basically confirming that Aoki was directly working with the FBI, and it's not like, oh, they were just using him. Record of field office. And all of this, I can only assume, appears in the FBI file. There may also be requests to use Aoki in particular ways, but if so, those requests are entirely redacted. Got it. Welcome Honky Nut. Interesting name. How is Aoki claiming to incur expenses without a dialogue with the Fed? That's the thing. I'm like, is Aoki like directly going to the FBI to like put a form and like, I need money because I use this? Like, I like, was he like overtly doing that and no one noticed? Unless he's knowingly letting the Fed know that he's incurring expenses. That's another thing. Like, that's another thing. Like, was he just taking money from the FBI? Which base? You know? Uh, it is the record. It is the record of field office requests. Wouldn't you say it is in the record? Or whatever. It is the record of field office requests to use Aoki, the updates on this status, and requests for reimbursement that Aoki claims to have incurred. I'm more confused. Okay, whatever. He said I had to file form. Oh, because he's an informant? No, but he said, but here it says that it is directly like. Oh, got it. Getting money for his collection was bragging. For his collection, he was bragging about guns. Not really. When you think about it, he wrote this shit. Who wrote this shit? I don't know. I'm confused. Okay, we're going to skip this paragraph. We understand that there is we understand that there is understanding from Aoki that he is working for the FBI. Did for them. Yeah, it has. We're getting to that stuff, you know. Again, we're in the Richard Aoki saga. This is drama. This is peak like Euphoria, The White Lotus who, The Last of Us who, Richard fucking Aoki drama. This is what the left should be talking about. This should be the discourse on Twitter. There may also be requests to use Aoki in particular ways where its other requests are entirely redacted. Aoki's FBI informant file seems to indicate that FBI field offices are required to periodically update the headquarters on their use of informants. In nearly every piece of correspondence, the field office rationalizes its use of Aoki as an informant and regularly emphasizes his mental stability, his dedication to the bureau, and the value of the information he provides. The repetition of these statements indicates that, rather than just being about Aoki, they were part of FBI protocol for assessing all of its informants. Yeah. More and more like a rat, yeah. Claims made in these reports may accurately reflect the viewpoint of FBI agents in the San Francisco field office about Aoki. But like most correspondents within any bureaucracy, FBI agents are also catering to the expectations of those higher up. In this case, the documents are telling J. Edgar Hoover and his lieutenants what they want to hear. That the FBI's use of resources to cultivate and maintain its informants are producing valuable information that could not be acquired in any other less risky, less expensive way. Aoki's own voice is nowhere in the file. His typewritten reports from the early 60s and FBI agent dictation of his telephone reports afterwards are contained elsewhere in FBI files and perhaps have yet to be released to the public. If Rosenfeld has these reports, including FD 302, he hasn't said so. What is FD 302? An FBI 302 form is used by FBI agents to report or summarize the interviews that they conduct. This contains information for the notes taken during the interview by the non-primary agent. Interesting. Hi, David. Welcome. We'd pay them for info we aren't, but they can't know that. Yeah. As a muscle, it's damn near impossible to not make departed references with all of this rat talk. Oh my god. Oh, okay. I was like, why don't I hear the um alert? And I just literally have my headset muted. Also, I don't know what you're saying, Johnny. What? Yes. Oh my god, so true, bestie. Hello? Okay, so they haven't released the interviews with Aoki, like between Aoki and Rosenfeld. Not Rosenfeld, and his FBI person. Departed. I'm sorry. I understood. Not a cop. Absent Absent Aoki's first person testimony, the FBI's informant file on him consists of a series of fragmentary bits of information. These fragments are difficult to decipher because the FBI has redacted the name of every organization that Aoki reported on and all descriptions of the specific information that he apparently provided to the FBI. Yeah, like I was earlier going through the file and it's like informant said blacked out about blacked out the they blacked out and it's like we literally don't know what he was saying. Yeah. Apparently it's a huge PDF. Sounds like a blank check. It literally is. And it's like at this point it's not whether he was an informant or not. It's like what did he say? You know, like that is what I'm invested now. The above captioned individual currently is being considered for development as a informant, like FBI informant, like the name of the person. Aoki was contacted and expressed the willingness to cooperate with the Bureau in any way possible, but stated that he has no contact with the Black Panther Party, I can only guess, or International Resistance Movement, or I don't know, since leaving Berkeley High, or a specific person. And then Aoki has been designated PST and the of Richard Ford. And it's like, what do you mean? But yeah. No matter what he's saying, it sounds like a lot of Panthers spent time in prison because of this dude's cooperation. So, but was it? I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Like, it was, but like, to what degree? You know, like, also, he wasn't the only informant. Not to like take blame away from him, right? But like let's also put it into perspective. Like he wasn't the only informant allegedly. Maybe he was, and he's all to blame. But yeah, you know, if he wasn't the only informant, we're talking about him. That is fair. Look, I just have a soft card. Okay. uh. So try not to accept the FBI narrative so directly. I don't know. I don't know. Let me be soft. Fucking rat. End of story. I know. I know. I know. I know. Absent Aoki's first person testimony, the FBI informant file on him consists of a series of Piece of information. These fragments are difficult to decipher because the FBI has redacted the name of every organization that Aoki reported on and all descriptions of the specific information that he apparently provided to the FBI. The FBI also redacted the San Francisco field office file number for Aoki's informant file, making it much more difficult to use previously released FBI documents to identify what kind of intelligence Aoki provided to the FBI and how it was used. But even with these limitations, the FBI file on Aoki is still valuable. The FBI has the ability to withhold documents without a trace, even when those documents are requested through FOIA. The first page of Aoki's informant file has the code name Richard Ford, Richard Wolf, on it to prevent association on the cover sheet of with Richard Aoki's name. Through FBI files, though FBI files are supposed to list each document in the file as a separately numbered serial in chronological order, the FBI, as a matter of policy, would not attach a serial number to certain kinds of sensitive documents so that they could be removed from a file without a trace. Motherfucker. So that they could be removed from a file trace. The documents released to Seth Rosenfeld from Aoki's informant files contain a number of documents without serial numbers that could have been easily withheld if the FBI had not been compelled by court order to release them. That we have these documents at all, even as redacted copies, should not be taken for granted. Okay. What's so hard about this? Like, everybody on the hard left, or whatever you want to fucking call it, has no problem calling out Chomsky for his work being used by the State Department, but we need to hear out this alternative perspective that Aoki needs to have this side story heard. This is not like his side of the story, by the way. Like, this article is not like in defense of Aoki. Like, this article is just like going through all the process of how we found out that he was an informant, like all the legalities and how FBI documentation works. Like, that's why I'm reading this. Like, this isn't what I thought I saw in the file. I thought Aoki and Ford were referred to as separate people in the same sentence. Can you show the file again? Oh, here. Aoki has been designated PSI and the of Richard Ford. I guess this is like the pseudonym of Richard Ford, which he will use in signing reports. That is what it said. And any amount of speculation in either direction really doesn't improve or eliminate anything new people are organizing today. Fair. Fair. I'm discovering this because I find it interesting information. Like... Okay. Aoki as informant. On first glance, Richard Aoki's informant file appears to provide a straightforward reporting of facts. Though he was listed by the FBI as an informant from 1961 to 77, Aoki's activity as an informant waxed and waned. He seems to have been most active as an informant from 61 to 64, when he reported on socialist groups according to Agent Threadhill, and 66 to 70, when he reported on the Black Panther Party and possibly the Third World Liberation Front. Damn. A closer reading of the file provides a few instances of Aoki seeking support from the FBI when struggling to pay for school, then pulling back from the FBI when busy with work or school obligations. This pattern raises questions about why Aoki became an informant and whether he developed second thoughts. According to the first serial in the 134 HQ, Richard Aoki submitted his first report as an informant to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in February 1961. The San Francisco Field Office assigned him to the codename Richard Wolf for his report and soon requested from FBI headquarters that he be made a PSI or potential security informant. But the idea that there isn't enough evidence that he's alright is laughable. Fair. Uh, the reductions doesn't help. Before now, that's super cool for you. Some of us hearing and are trying to understand it. Yeah. Like, but also to be fair, like Johnny literally didn't know who Richard Aoki was, and he just came in with the understanding, oh, he's an FBI, fuck him, you know. Like we yesterday watched like an entire. We literally watched uh like we watched a video about all his work and then an hour and a half interview of like everything he did and with sprinkle of but was he an FBI though? So like we have like a little more of attachment to him to be like, oh no, he's not an FBI, but like we know he's an FBI, just saying, you know, like we just are more interested in the nuances and psyche of like why he became an FBI and all of that, you know? So yeah, like so, you know, again, material conditions, context, broader reality. Oh yeah, according to the first serial, Aoki submitted his first report as an informant to the Federal Bureau in 61. Carlos the Jackal. No, but we're not getting into another informant right now. I have enough with Aoki this month. Next month we can cover Carlos. Even though also whatever. The San Francisco field office assigned him to the codename Richard Ford for this report as soon as he requested the FBI PSI potential informant. By November of 1961, Serial 6 shows San Francisco agents praising Aoki to their superiors for providing them with voluminous information as well as important data delivered in current concise and complete reports, usually typewritten by him. Damn! He was a little too dedicated. He's the opposite of an informant, but yeah, you should cover that dude. Okay, fine. Fine. What do you mean the opposite of an informant? Was he like a double agent that like lied to the CIA? uh, by him at a time when many men and few informants knew how to type. Interesting. Whatever position Aoki held in activist groups he reported on inspired the FBI to also claim Aoki's report were of unusual value. Interesting. In June of 1962, the FBI reported that Aoki furnished names of people in left-wing organizations as well as those who attended meetings sponsored by those organizations, that he continues to be a close personal friend of someone that the FBI presumably considered fairly important, and that the FBI held Aoki to be of significant value because he was the only source they had that was currently active in a particular organization that he was spying on. Damn. Richard Aoki's informant status apparently changed when he enrolled in college. FBI files begin to refer to Aoki, saying that he must work out financial arrangements before he can do unspecified tasks for them, and that his unemployment during August 1963 may be having an impact on his work as an informant. Okay, how was he not like getting hard money by doing this work? Why was he having like financial difficulties by being an FBI informant? Was he like willingly working with the FBI? Is he like worse than just a regular rat? But like just a shitty person? It's like people, rats, shitty person. How many impacts of the work? And though he resumed his duties as an informant in the fall of 1963, he appears to have worked part-time or been fully focused on his college studies during 63 and 64 school year. Portrays Aoki as loyal to himself and opportunist snake. Yes. Also, hi BBDH, welcome. During the 64-65 school year, Aoki's work for the FBI appears to have dropped off some more. Working full-time while attending school full-time, Aoki told the FBI that his current employment situation precludes his ability to serve as a regular informant. In January, the FBI reported that Aoki was not engaged in his full activities as an informant because he is working nights and attending school during the day. It went on to elaborate that Aoki feels that it will be necessary for him to continue his employment for another 6 months. Informant has had to support himself for a number of years and has had no family to turn to for any financial aid. He feels that his schooling should come first, but before it is necessary for him to obtain a degree in order that he might look forward to elevating himself in the community. Damn, I mean, it's like so much like social indoctrination. Informant is eager to maintain his relationship with the Bureau and to be of any service possible. Informant feels that once he is enrolled at the UC, he will be in a good position to assist Bureau in its investigation. FBI gave drug jobs vehicles, pay for patrol food, not limited to putting money in bank account. Carlos de Cal took his name from Carlos Marighella. If you haven't heard of Marighella, I'm sure you have. There would be much for you to learn yet. Much for you to learn yet. Okay. Former Bureau. Feels the one he's enrolled to the UC. Okay. This long passage testifies to the way that Aoki invoked the need for school and for steady income to keep at bay some of the FBI's more aggressive demands that he continued to work as an informant. At the same time, this strategy for keeping the FBI at bay also maintained Aoki's ongoing relationship with the FBI rather than severing it completely. It may suggest that Aoki partly wanted to serve as an informant for the financial benefits, which could also bankroll his education, but also threatened to distract him from it. It would not be unreasonable to ask whether Aoki was reconsidering his role as an informant from 63 to 65. Perhaps he was merely using financial hardship as an excuse to step back from spying on left-wing groups. Or the other hand, the fact that the FBI claimed that he was resumed full activities as an informant by the summer of 65 seems to suggest if Aoki had a change of heart, he certainly didn't take decisive action to sever his ties with the FBI. I hate him now. Richard Aoki is that fuckboy. If you know, you know. Aoki then appears to have been an active informant through the rest of the late 60s, during which time he was close to the Black Panther Party and was the leader in the Third World Liberation Front at UC Berkeley. He withdrew somewhat in the 70s, in 1970 due to prison employment as a member of faculties, but continued on as an informant in a likely more limited form from 1970 to 1977, even while serving as a college professor. Damn. South America, that's surprising he's never mentioned or telling people in the West. Not least because he inspired. Oh yeah. Worth noting that the BPP formed in '66 Uh, who was he informing on before? It would be. Oh, he was informing about the Third World Liberation Front. That's what I think. That is what he was talking about. He was informing about during 63 to 65, or rather 61 to 63, if I'm not mistaken, or 64, but yeah. Okay. Though nearly every bit of information provided in the FBI by Aoki is redacted, there is fragmentary evidence that suggests that the FBI wanted Aoki to provide information on the group One I War Quen. Serial 59 of Aoki's informant file mentions a letter regarding the investigation of a topic related to ISIWK, whose office of origin is in San Francisco field is the San Francisco field office. IS generally stands for internal security, with the kind of IS investigation explained by the following acronym. In this case, IWK. IWK could stand for I Work When, a New York based organization that, when it merged with the Bay Area based Red Guard Party in 71, formed what Diane Fujino called in her biography of Aoki the first national revolutionary Asian American organization. It would make sense for the FBI to solicit information on IWK from Aoki. Whether Aoki was actually provided such information requires more research to determine. Likely in the San Francisco FBI field office files on IWK. The final document in the FBI's informant file on Aoki revealed that Aoki told FBI agents that he feared ever publicly revealing his identity as an informant. Sources advised that he is not willing to testify in open court or before administrative hearing boards if such testimony would reveal his past connection with the FBI. Interesting. That is why he would just continue denying everything. The field office report noted the FBI agent in San Francisco reported. The FBI agent in San Francisco cited this information in part to demonstrate to FBI headquarters that Aoki would not be liable to expose the FBI's illegal domestic intelligence programs, and also that it could not use his testimony for government hearings or litigation. But it also inadvertently may have registered Aoki's own sense of guilt about his work as an informant. Exposure of his role, he reportedly told the FBI, would alienate him from associates, friends, and would cause him great trouble in his relationship with students as a student counselor. Oh, you think? You think being an FBI agent would have alienate you? Wonder why. The counterintelligence question. The exposure of Richard Aoki as a longtime informant for the FBI inevitably raises questions about what kind of informant he was. The FBI waged extensive counterintelligence programs against two of the organizations that Aoki reportedly spied on: the Socialist Workers' Party and the Black Panther Party. Was Aoki consciously part of the disruption of these two groups? Was he an unknowing accomplice in destroying the groups he reported on? There is not a shred of evidence released so far that indicates that Richard Aoki consciously engaged in counterintelligence activities against his comrades. But that hasn't stopped people from speculating. On the one hand, Rosenfeld's writing in Subversives connects Aoki's activism to what Rosenfeld described as violent turning the left in the late 60s in the Bay Area. implicitly raising the question about whether and to what degree government agencies are responsible for the actions of their informants. On the other hand, where Churchill and others have speculated that the exposure of Aoki is itself a form of government counterintelligence to distort the legacy of Richard Aoki. It is interesting because I would include like him informing like him working with the FBI alone as part of counterintelligence activities. But I don't know what they are defining as counterintelligence and why would they not necessarily include him being an FBI informant as such. So I don't know how to engage with this paragraph specifically. Though I will say that, like, it's like weird because are we truly? I think it's all the things. Yeah. Like, but another thing is like, what are we losing? True, like in the grand scheme of things, what is the left losing by the distortion of the legacy of Aoki? Do you know what I mean? Like, we could still acknowledge that he did the work that he did, but at the same time, acknowledge that he was a piece of shit FBI informant. But we can also just trace all of that back to capitalism bad because he needed money and that's why he worked for the FBI. You know? Uh but yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Worth noting the PPT information things. I think they mean getting the informant infiltrator to behave in certain ways while doing activism in order to fuck their activism. Yeah. Oh, okay, got it. So yeah, that's why I'm like, yeah, I guess you could just not count him as part of the counterintelligence, but you know, I could see how people would still want to label him as such by just the mere fact of working with the FBI. I think they're saying that the timing of the release of it. I think they are saying that the timing of the release is the counterintelligence. No, yeah, they are saying that the counterintelligence is like the the distortion of the legacy of Richard Aoki, but I am asking like back to that like should like regardless of the distortion of Aoki's legacy, shouldn't we still be aware of these things happening, of informants existing and all of that, like, and not to even that, and apart from that, like, can we, is the fact that he was an FBI informant so jarring, so horrific that we will therefore need to just disregard everything that he did for the movement at the time and his position and place in the movement? Do you know what I mean? Like, Um, like Joel in chat mentioned a couple of days ago how Bobby Seale turned out to be not the best person ever, and like does that fact should that fact like make us dismiss the fact that he ultimately still was a founder of the Black Panther Party? You know what I mean? Like, is it that difficult for us to come to terms with the fact that important people in the movement ultimately also made uh ultimately also did things that worked against it? Like it is like I understand that it is a complex contradiction to grapple with, but at the end of the day that's just the reality and that's history, and we should just learn from it, like be able to take all the good that Aoki did and learn from that, but also be cognizant of the fact that anyone can be working for the FBI. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, nuance. I found interesting is that he was first contacted while serving in the reserves. It's between the first notes of the PDF. Interesting. We learned that infiltrators exist and be careful, and the BBP an inspiring is as inspiring as ever. It's a lesson not to be snitch. Yeah, a lot of people compartmentalize their life. Doesn't make my think any less of the BBP in this moment. I wonder why it wasn't when he was in the gangs in high school. He really glossed over that part in his life in his interview. Really? I was like, yeah, I was part of the gangs, but I was a valedictorian, and I'm like, okay, okay, go off. Okay, but in both cases, the debate over whether Aoki was an informant prevents a more nuanced approach to exploring the historical significance of his relationship with the FBI. In theory, intelligence and counterintelligence are different and separate activities. Intelligence, oh, interesting. Intelligence involves the gathering of information about people's lives. Counterintelligence involves the spreading of information, sometimes false, sometimes true, but sensitive or private, for the purpose of disrupting others' lives. Intelligence may sometimes be considered a legitimate part of law enforcement investigations into criminal activities. Counterintelligence, because it replaces law enforcement with subterfuge.
Subterfuge. Subterfuge.
Subterfuge is an is anathema to democracies. Okay, too many like subterfuge, deceit used in order to achieve one's goal. Anathema, a rock band, something or someone that is vehemently disliked. Got it. It's like getting caught up in the law and being informed before you ever encounter leftist groups that they want to spy on. Yeah. Law informants with is. Oh, got it. So like counterintelligence isn't liked by democracies. In practice, however, the distinction between intelligence and counterintelligence can blur, most often through the figure of The informant. The psyche of the psyche of the informant is often rife with complexities and contradictions associated with having to perform very different roles. Informants do not, indeed cannot, just passively report on the activities they observe. Through their participation in organizations and their personal relationships with those they report on, informants inevitably influence what they describe and to some degree are also autoethnographers. Informants not only document radicalism, they participate in it. In so doing, they may even encourage its development. Whether informants become organizers out of affinity with radicals or as a form of entrapment, or both, varies widely and is always difficult to discern. But it is important to note that sometimes informants do not just follow, they lead, and not always at the direction of those to whom they report. This, I think, is part of what Tony Platt meant when he recently wrote that we need to consider the possibility that Aoki was both an informant and a leftist, and that he both reported to and fought against the FBI. Yeah, again, nuance, complexity. It's like me. I'm a Swiftie and a communist. I'm not sure. It might have been a sort of captive audience situation where he wasn't even fully aware of what he was talking about, just that his commanders had an assignment for him, but I don't know. I'm really fuzzy on this info. Interesting. Thank you, Sam. It is not unreasonable to expect that most FBI informants remain unaware of how the information they provided was used. The very existence of numerous FBI counterintelligence programs, COINTELPRO, against American citizens in the 50s and 60s was not made public until 1971. It's unlikely that the FBI briefed its informants, who after all were not FBI agents, on the FBI's illegal counterintelligence programs, even when informants might have been party to these programs in some form. Oh my god, do you all want to be a party? My new pronouns are rave and party. uh, a dramatic example of how informants can be used for counterintelligence in ways that they are not aware of is the case of William O'Neill. Interesting example. The informant of the Chicago Black Panther Party who provided a floor plan to Fred Hampton's home to the FBI. Yeah, I'm not sure this is a good example. uh, O'Neill was apparently shocked to witness the Chicago police use his floor plan to raid Hampton's home and assassinate Hampton while he was lay sleeping in bed. Girl, you literally drugged him though. What do you mean you're in shock? Oh, I just thought that the FBI wanted him to have a good night of sleep. 20 years later, O'Neill went out of his way to explain to an interviewer for Eyes on the Prize that despite this raid, he did not think of himself as having engaged in counterintelligence. You literally drugged him. You literally drugged Fred Hampton, and you're like, but I didn't do it though. I didn't kill him, and it's like, Contrary to public belief, I haven't been instructed to commit crimes, or provoke crimes, or conduct burglaries, or inject drugs in people, or to commit murder. Yeah, you didn't inject drugs onto him. You just put the drugs in his drink. Or to commit murder. I haven't been. If anything, my association with the FBI made me a better person. Disgusting. Disgusting. Yet the question that informants have about how their work is used can be haunting. Not long after Eyes on the Prize episode about Hampton's murder aired on national TV, O'Neill committed suicide on Martin Luther King Day. Interesting. Whatever helps you sleep at night, O'Neill. Literally, like, hello? Oh yeah, the FBI made me a better person. Like, sure, buddy. Informants aren't entirely unaware, however, that information that they provide to governments about social movements could be used against those movements. To rationalize their double lives and minimize the sense of guilt they might feel during the course of befriending people whose lives they are spying on, informants may also come to see themselves as protectors of social movements. For instance, when activists in Olympia, Washington confronted the fellow anti-war organizer in 2009 with evidence that he was a USA Army intelligence agent who was illegally spying on them, the informant, John Towery, reportedly cried. Like, okay. I get it. Like, as a crier, I get it. But at the same time, crying, crying doesn't mean anything. You know, like, oh, you're crying. Okay, we forgive you for being a fucking informant to the fucking FBI. Also, hi, catalepsy. Welcome. Yes, I'm streaming because I don't have a schedule. Also, I can't believe I've been streaming for 3 hours. Fine, fine. Yes. Towery had so deeply infiltrated Olympia port militarization resistance that he moderated its emails list listserv and helped lead its direct action trainings, all the while sharing information about their protests with local law enforcement and regional anti-terrorist agencies. Yet, he tried to explain to those who confronted him with his betrayal being an informant is complicated. This is literally High School Musical for real. Like, Troy, are you in the theater production? No, it's not what you think of. It's not what you think of. It's complicated. There are always There are ways, he said, that informants can protect those they report on from repression. That they can influence the government based on what they choose to report and how they report it to their superiors. OP, OPMR activists didn't believe a word he said because, after all, he had lied to them for years and his protection seemed a lot like betrayal. But regardless of whether he was telling the truth, what is interesting is that Towery may have believed what he said, that he thought he was protecting OPMR while reporting on it provides a telling insight into how informants justify their work to themselves. There is likely a grain of truth to the idea that the discretion afforded informants There is likely a grain of truth to the idea that the discretion afforded informants can be significant. You mean afforded to informants can be significant? That the discretion afforded or discretion afforded informant can be significant, and informants' decisions on what and how to report what they know can shape how governments respond to social movements. That's why the FBI routinely sought to infiltrate organizations with more than one informant. When it could, the FBI collected reports from multiple informers on the same event, organizations, or individuals. Inevitably, this meant that informants were also reporting on the behavior of other informants without knowing it. In this context, a single FBI informant's ability to protect activists or shape history, while real, is probably more limited than they would like to believe. Interesting. Single importance ability to protect activists is probably more limited than they would like to believe. Even when informants aren't consciously participating in counterintelligence programs and information that they provide Even when informants aren't consciously participating in counterintelligence programs and information that they provide is not used for counterintelligence, their attempts to blend into an activist organization will still have effects and may even be disruptive. Informants can perform a certain kind of strident or militant role in activist groups to identify and report on radicals in a social movement. Performing militancy may not be intentionally disruptive, but it can contribute to an organizational culture that isolates moderates or dissenters. I am so confused by this paragraph. What? Even when informants aren't consciously participating in counterintelligence programs and information that they provide is not used for counterintelligence, their attempt to blend into activist organizations will still have effects and may be disruptive. Yes, informants can perform a certain kind of strident or militant role in activist groups to identify and report on radicals and social movements. Performing militancy may not be intentionally disruptive, but it can contribute to an organizational culture that isolates moderates and dissenters. I don't understand that it can contribute to an organizational culture that isolates moderates and dissenters. Yeah, it's like incitement. Yeah, I understand how like the fact that them being informed, like I understand that them being an informant can be disruptive in itself, but I understand the organizational culture that isolates moderates and dissenters. Make the group more radical by peer pressure. Breaking up groups by trying to do actions without analysis or accidentally. Interesting. Okay. Got it. I think it's commenting on how this kind of militancy isn't organic. Interesting. I can see that. Okay. Also, we're in. Who wrote this? Trevor Griffey, I highly encourage you to just use shorter sentences. My literature teacher in 10th grade told me you should use less commas and more periods. That changed my life forever. And I just encourage you to do the same. Okay. Can be alienated by that. Oh, got it. Seth, Seth Rosenfeld's subversives provide in groups of 3 or more. Seth Rosenfeld's subversives provides a troubling anecdote that highlights the ways in which, whether or not Richard Aoki was ever part of a formal counterintelligence program, he was hardly just a passive observer of social movements. His actions, whether at the discretion of at the direction of the government or his own conscience or some mix of both, encouraged left-wing militancy. Like, okay, this is why I'm like kind of weirded out by the author. Like, is the author saying that militancy itself is bad? Because like I don't think so. Even worse, like the entire point of like the Black Panther Party being militant is literally for for the purpose of self defense. I mean, and not to even mention that, yeah, like these organizations were militant by design. It's not like these FBI informants were like, oh, let's be more militant, you know, like let's be more militant so the police has an excuse to kill us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like they knew what they were doing already, you know. Facts, bro. I was told learn how to punctuation, and I was like, literally how? It's to accomplish something a little weird. Yeah. Also, okay. Side note. Is punctuation hard? Yes. But when you get it, you get it. You know? Not to even mention that for some reason, punctuation in English is like a little more laissez-faire, more like, that's crazy. Oh my god, let's put a comma here. And it's like, you are literally putting a comma in the middle of a sentence that really doesn't need a comma. And you are literally disrupting everything. So, yeah. So I just use Spanish grammar in English, like Spanish punctuation in English. But yeah. Getting into illegal activities in some other groups might influence things. Interesting. Okay. Got it. Got it, got it, got it. Also probably thinks the BPP started out just planning to register people to vote for Democrats until Aoki came along and radicalized them. Yeah, like that is also vibe I've been getting from a couple of people in the chat, and it's like the Black Panther like the like, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale literally knew that they needed weapons from the very beginning. Literally, that is the entire reason why they got out from the other organization they were in. But whatever, you know, like Like literally, Huey was a law student that knew that it was legal for them to carry weapons on the street. And that is the entire legal backbone, the legal justification for them to do that. Like, they knew what they were doing. Like, it feels so infantilizing of these groups of like, oh my god, they wouldn't have used weapons if it wasn't for the FBI. And it's like, the FBI would have killed them regardless. Like, okay. Seth Roosevelt's Subversive provides a troubling anecdote that highlights the ways in which, whether or not Richard Aoki was ever part of a formal counterintelligence program, he was hardly just a passive observer of social movements. His actions, whether the direction of the government or his own conscience, or some mix of both, encouraged left-wing militancy, while also sometimes discouraging alliances with moderates. Okay, this author is giving me like, oh my god, why are you not organizing with suckdams? Why are you not organizing with liberals? And it's like, I would be down to if they actually understood that capitalism bad and that we actually need like, gender liberation and not just hashtag girl boss. If we actually need queer liberation and not just a pride flag pin. If they actually understood that we need to abolish white supremacy and not just have a hashtag Black Lives Matter in your Twitter bio. Do you know what I mean? Like, because the moment we say capitalism bad, they're going to be like, oh my god, per clutching, and then like go like start like shaming and be like, oh my god, but like violence bad, guys, and like we don't want to have to deal with like bullshit sometimes, and not even mention that sometimes having these liberals in organizations is not just lethal to the own organizations, but like they literally prevent any like change from happening. They prevent any action from happening. They prevent like actual furthering of our goals from happening. Like according to Rosenfeld in 1970, at the time when Aoki had been working as an FBI informant for 9 years, Manuel Delgado received a phone call saying that some of the Black Strike leaders had kidnapped Richard Rodriguez and were holding him in an apartment on Shattuck Avenue. Rodriguez was one of the staff of the university's YMCA at Stiles Hall. Delgado's trusted colleagues and one of the more Delgado's trusted colleague and one of the more moderate Third World Liberation Front strike leaders. I literally read this every other stream. Later, the Chinese Revolution. Okay. In China, in 1927, the defeat of the proletariat by the big bourgeoisie came about through the opportunism then to be found within the Chinese proletariat itself, inside the Chinese Communist Party. When we liquidated this opportunism, the Chinese Revolution resumed its advance. Later, the Chinese Revolution again suffered severe setbacks at the hands of the enemy, because adventurism had risen within our party. When we liquidated this adventurism, our cause advanced once again. Thus, it can be seen that to lead the revolution to victory, a political party must depend on the correctness of its own political line and the solidity of its own organization. So yeah, there is a reason why we don't organize with liberals. Thank you, bye. Rushing over, Delgado found Rodriguez seated in the middle of a room as if being interrogated. As several blacks, sorry, looked on and Aoki hovered over him, "We're going to kill this motherfucking snitch," Aoki said, slapping Rodriguez across the face. Delgado stepped in between them, took Rodriguez, and left. Afterward, Aoki sought to assuage
Assuage. Assuage.
assuage Delgado, revealing that he was secretly a member of the Black Panthers and it was his job to stay close to the Black Strikers to make sure they weren't unduly influenced by Black nationalists who were rivals of the Panthers. "That's why it looks like I'm on their side all the time," he said. Delgado remained suspicious of Aoki, however, because he seemed to be playing two sides on the Central Committee. However, because he remained suspicious of Aoki, however, because he seemed to be playing two sides of the Central Committee. Got it. When Rosenfeld asked Aoki about this story in 2007, Aoki was unrepentant about his conduct and continued to suggest that Rodriguez had been an informant. Aoki confirmed this account by Delgado of the Richard Rodriguez incident as true. Rosenfeld wrote in his book's endnotes and said he suspected Rodriguez was stirring dissension up within our ranks. Aoki explained that some of us felt that he was a mole for the administration because he was constantly throwing water on our plant. Rodriguez was perceived as being one of the soft people. Oh my god, literally me. In contrast, Aoki reportedly bragged I was considered the heart of the heart. Dog. The need to open the file. Okay, before we get into this, on contradiction is not complicated, it's not hard, it's not long, it is pretty straightforward, has all you need to know about the basics of dialectical materialism, organizing, revolution, Why do I have to be quoting this every other day? Why? And not even the entirety of On Contradiction. I literally have to quote this specific fragment every other day. But yeah. Okay. The need to open the file. The exposure of Richard Aoki as an informant is a tiny blip in the history of the FBI domestic intelligence operations. It's important to keep the bigger picture in view to use the release of Aoki's file and the discussion that it has generated to demand a full historical reckoning that the American people have so far been denied. So far, the left's response to the release of Aoki's informant file has been largely defensive and introverted. This is an understandable reaction to a sensational way that Seth Rosenfeld released his allegation. But defensiveness has also narrowed the scope of discussion about Rosenfeld's scholarship to the question of whether Aoki was an informant, without any clear understanding of what an informant is. Okay, I'm kind of dying, so. Okay. So far, the left response is. But defensiveness has also narrowed the scope of this discussion about the Rosenfeld scholarship to the question of whether Aoki was an informant without any clear understanding of what an informant is. Aoki's informant file provides us with important insights into the way the FBI proceeds and maintains its informants. It shows how the cultivation of long-term informants at an early age could assist the FBI with infiltrating activist organizations at their highest levels. And it raises a whole host of questions, not just about what information Aoki provided to the FBI, but how the FBI used that information and to what end. Pursuit of this information could provide insights not just into Aoki and the organizations he participated in, but also into how the FBI used its informants more broadly. If the release of just one informant's file could generate these kinds of questions, imagine what could be learned by the release of the FBI domestic intelligence files after half century. As the 60s turned 50, the time seems ripe for the public to demand a full accounting of the role that its government took in monitoring and repressing social movements during the Cold War. The National Archives and Records Administration (NARA) has in the past decade acquired hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of pages of historic FBI files that it does not have the resources to declassify in our lifetimes. This includes civil rights investigations from the 50s and the 60s, 44 classification files, investigation into the New Left and Black Power movements, located partly in 157 classification files, anti-conspiracy investigation and trial materials, 176 classification files, and most importantly, the main domestic security file of the Hoover era from the 40s to 70s, 100 classification files. We should demand the release of the files in unredacted form. Yes, this is more than the demand for an historical reckoning. It is a challenge to a national security state whose ongoing use of informants depend on historical erasure. This is a great call to action. 1. To the degree that the FBI still has Aoki's informant reports, they are likely contained in 50 pages of file numbers provided to Rosenfeld along with Aoki's informant file. These slips of paper identify documents related to Aoki in dozens of different investigation files. In addition, the National Archives likely has material of interest to researchers. NARA currently holds the original San Francisco field office files for the two organizations that Aoki became famous for participating in, the Black Panther Party and the Third World Liberation Front. These voluminous files have yet to be declassified and deserve much greater attention than they have so far received from historians. Because the classification backlogs at NARA, it may require litigation to compel NARA to declassify these files anytime in the near future. 2. Are these just sources? These are the footnotes. Okay, I was like, is he going to get to a to a list of why we need to declassify the FBI documents? No, okay, these are the footnotes. Thank you, Boo. Okay, we finished the. Okay, what have we learned by reading this article? The lengths that the FBI are willing to go, how they work, how varied the degrees of importance that informants have can vary in the results of what the FBI actually does. This was a very horribly constructed sentence. I'm sorry. But we now understand that basically informants can have different roles and they are deep into the FBI in various levels, in various degrees. And even then, the information that the FBI receives from them can be used in different ways. And I don't know, I feel like this is like a lackluster conclusion, but you know. What else? We understand, well, if you didn't know already, the FBI has files. Aoki was deeper into the FBI than we had initially thought. And I cannot say anything more about him. Apparently, this was a discourse on the left, on the actual left, around 2012. So that is interesting, a nice piece of information to understand. And I would like to know, yeah, release all the Hoover papers. That's what I'm calling them. Is there anything else? Don't need to open files. The article was written. So this article was written in 2012. I doubt more the files. Any more files have been like declassified or been released to the public. You know, so. The counterintelligence question. I like this nuanced perspective of what is intelligence and counterintelligence. And though I understand in the grand scheme of things it doesn't really matter, you know, because FBI. It was still like a like, I don't know, interesting how language works and how we want to like minimize certain actions. There are infiltrators in every organization, and if you don't think so, then you are in danger to yourself and those in that group. Literally. Also, like, those infiltrators will literally be in all like ranks of the organization, you know, like Aoki was literally the third founder of the Black Panther Party, and like no one fucking knew. You know, like what else? I want to read more about the I War Queen. Interesting. And the Third World Liberation Front, because I feel like people definitely don't talk about the I War Queen, but they don't talk as much about the Third World Liberation Front. Aoki is an informant. She was an informant. FBI. Oh, and we learned about like how the FBI organize their files and how to read them, which honestly is pretty fucking valuable information. Wait, this is how we end. If you call yourself an organizer or an activist and you don't study the COINTELPRO papers, or you believe that it's a thing of the past, don't believe that you can be a potential target, then you are in danger to yourself and others. Literally! Oh my god, so true, King. So true. But, yeah. You know. Like, subscribe, retweet. Oh yeah, and random drop of drama. I mean, if you didn't know, like, I don't know how you're here and don't know that Keppel's bad actually, but like, what's this take? It's really embarrassing that people decided to bully Hassan Abi into not streaming the Wizard game for charity when the material harm from playing the game is practically null, and there is now no money being raised for trans people who desperately need it. White people are cancerous. Oh yeah, we haven't finished actually. Sorry, I put your hopes up. This is a smaller article. Is it a smaller? Oh my god, I don't have the brains to read it right now. He literally gets a fraction of the viewership when he games versus just chatting when he never needed to play the game to get charged, literally. Like literally. He like whatever. But somehow he was able to do the charity stream now for the earthquake in Turkey. Is this another 2012 one? Okay. If it's the same, I won't finish it, but if it's like more information. Okay. FBI files reveal new details about the informant who armed the Black Panthers. Revelations that prominent radical activist Richard Aoki was an FBI informant have prompted angry denials among his supporters, but newly released records confirm Aoki was secretly providing information to agents during the period he gave the Black Panthers guns and firearms trainings. The documents from Aoki FBI file, totaling 221 pages, were released after a court challenge under the Freedom of Information Act, and showed that Aoki was an informant from 61 to 77. He provided information that was unique and of extreme value. The records chronicle Aoki's 16-year career as an informant during the time he was a student at Merritt College in Oakland and UC Berkeley. Ronald Reagan to declare the state of emergency. An early FBI report says Aoki was assigned the alias Richard Ford to use when signing reports, as well as permanent informant number, which the FBI redacted. On December 71, on the December 14, 1971 report notes that Aoki was an instructor in Asian Studies in UC Berkeley and a student counselor at the Grove Street campus on Peralta Junior High College District. FBI officials even reminded Aoki to report his pay as an informant on his tax return according to the handwritten notation. Oh my god, that is disgusting. Like, it is disgusting that, like, so many levels of like, why, how, this doesn't even make sense, what do you mean, why, like, so like, you are being paid by money that is being refunded with taxes, but you have to give a part of that money back in taxes that will just go back to you regardless. If you click the links, it goes directly to the file references. Oh, got it. I still want to like go over it quickly. Aoki was a well-known Bay Area's activist. He was born in San Leandro. The assertion that Aoki was an informant was first made last month in a news report and video in the Center of Investigate Reporting. Both were based on the new book Subversive. Fuck that book. I mean, I don't know. Like, fuck that book not because of Aoki, but fuck that book because it was written by a fucking liberal, so... You know. He was an informant, Aoki's friend, as well as his biographer, producer and film, expressed shock at the disclosure. The FBI released the records as a result of the lawsuit under the Freedom of Information Act, swearing to retired FBI agent Chris
They're fucking liberals, dude.
who has
They're
criticized
liberals.
FBI unlawful. Oh my god, literally. Did it sound? I hope so. Early reports contain certain errors about his age and ethnicity. Some early reports note that he had temporarily decreased his information because of school and work. Early memo, Richard Aoki. Aoki had told the army officials that he attended certain socials while a student at Berkeley High School. That fall, Aoki joined the Berkeley Young Socialist Alliance. Oh, that is the organization he was covering for the FBI previous to the Black Panther Party that Dorian asked previously. The report also says this informant is closely controlled and has constantly been reminded of his position as an informant. The relationship must remain absolutely confidential. In 62, during past 4 months, informant has furnished considerable information. Information has submitted complete and thorough report. Curtail activities, resentful activities, there is no allocation. By now, Aoki was active in the Vietnam Day Committee, a Berkeley-based group whose anti-war activities were being investigated by the FBI. He worked on the group's international committee as a liaison to foreign anti-war activists. Damn, he was literally doing the CIA work for them. Full-time student among the Black Panthers. Aoki met Huey Newton and Bobby Steele, two fellow students who were forming a group that would become later known as Black Panther for self-defense. After Aoki transferred to Berkeley, they consulted him about their plan for the group, and he gave them some of their first guns and firearms training. Aoki gave him additional guns. According to Steele's memoir, since the time Aoki had been named captain of the Berkeley branch of the Black Panthers. During this period, the Panthers openly carried weapons on their patrols of Oakland police, which they said were intended to reduce brutality against African Americans. That May, they brandished guns during a visit to the state legislature to protest a bill that would bar carrying firearms on city streets. The FBI records show Aoki was informant during this period, but the redacted files do not mention the Panthers or the guns. The next report in February 67 is heavily redacted, but says that during this presented period, Aoki provided no information of unusual value. Teaching and beyond subsequent reports say Aoki continued to inform throughout 69, submitting written and oral reports on numerous people. On January 69 memo, because of volume and value of information being furnished, informants should be continued. 70 reported headquarters, master's degree. Aoki informed even after a full-time faculty member prior to college. A former confidential informant in 67, in 76, in 77 notes that Aoki most recently has been an FBI informant in Chinese foreign counterintelligence investigation. Interesting. Aoki, the report says, had concluded that being an informant was inconsistent with his work as an educator. He refused to reveal his past relationship with the FBI because this would alienate him from associates and friends and would cause him. Yeah, we already know that. He's being placed in a close status. Interesting. Keep losing. Yeah. Interesting. This is basically like a TLDR. This is literally a TLDR of the FBI document, and though we haven't gotten over, we are not going to go over the FBI documents. That is too much fucking work. I did go over some of the highlights throughout the document before stream, and like it is not like it is clear that he was an informant. It is clear that he was like not like eager to be there, but it like because everything is redacted, like nothing of like no further information is there. Like we don't know what he was saying, but we can only assume that everything he said was ultimately used against the leftist movement. So yeah, you know.